Well, now the expectations are very high, and so I got a beer just in case I disappoint you guys. So anyway, my name is Paul Singh, and I suppose I'm a blood-sucking venture capitalist. Also, I'm American. I don't know what's worse, but I'm glad to be here. I'll tell you, I end up traveling about 250,000 miles a year, 50 countries. I feel like I do my laundry in Washington, D.C., and I get to come to all these cool places. But I'll tell you, this is the first time I've been in Portugal. We actually invested in a company called TalkDesk from here. We were the first, I think, the first investors in them, and we heard about Portugal. I'd never come, and I'll tell you, I've only been here 48 hours, but you people seem to be able to work hard and play hard, and I think I've been hungover for the last 48 hours. I don't know how you guys do it. Anyway, my name is Paul Singh again. I won't bore you with my background, but I'll tell you I was an immigrant from India. My parents moved to America. Growing up, I was a bricklayer, used car salesman. I made pizzas, actually. Great pizza. I can make a great pizza, and I can build you a patio. And then I worked at a company called America Online back in the 90s. And if it wasn't for that job, I wouldn't have realized the power of the internet. And so what I want to talk about today is sort of, if you want to learn about fundraising, all that stuff, there's a lot of stuff about that on the internet. But what I want to kind of talk about is sort of how tech companies are starting to change the cities that around the world. And this will make more sense in a few minutes, but over the last few years, I've been really fortunate in the sense that I've been able to help invest in 1,000 companies. And one of the stories I'm going to tell you about is how I took over an 8 million square foot city and rebuilt it over the last 2 years. So hopefully in there's some nuggets that are useful. I'm sorry for my voice, by the way. I've been talking to all of you guys today. But I want to make it interactive. So if you have any questions, feel free to say it and just yell it out. If you think I'm full of shit, just heckle out loud. Anyway, and it's so bright I can't even see you, so I don't even know if you're sitting there. Let me start with a question. Why are tech companies important? Why are tech companies important?
Because they create value to the world.
Create value? What else?
Innovation.
Innovation? Anybody else?
They disrupt.
That's a good one. Yeah, they disrupt. So it turns out, those are all correct, actually, but my assertion is that they're important for two reasons. And the first is that in any industrialized nation, technology tends to be the fundamental driver of growth. So what that means is that, look, 1,000 years ago, technology was the pencil, right? Once you had the pencil, you had sort of the power to move forward. That was tech. 500 years ago, it was the printing press. If you had the printing press, you could push information out. You were the innovator. 100 years ago, it was a steam engine. Today, it's sort of the laptops that you're using, the phones you're using. So once you have roads and toilets and safety and security and things like that, technology tends to be the fundamental driver of growth. But the second reason is that tech companies tend to be one of the last legal ways to make a shitload of money. And that, half joking, half seriously, that is what makes places better. That's what makes your lives better. That, the more jobs you create, the safer everyone is. It's a sort of gift that just keeps giving back. So one of the things that we forget as Americans, though, is that if you look at the last 20 years of the internet, we have been able to create some very large companies, very lucrative companies. You think about Facebook, Amazon, eBay, Twitter, LinkedIn, and we did that on a population of about 350 million people. So let me just ask another question: Why was America the first monetizable user base on the internet? English speaking. What else?
American dream.
The American dream, maybe. I don't actually know what the American dream is, but I'm living the dream. I don't know what it is, but I'm living it.
Long ago, there was like the Silicon Valley where they needed to extract the silica from the mines, and they started to create microchips for the computers, and then started to grow that culture, and that was it. That was the ping pong.
Well, that is true, but really what it is it was the credit cards. We had the ability, we, for better or for worse, we had pushed credit cards into the hands of as many consumers as we could, and that made it easier to sell things to people without having to move money back and forth, right? And so it's really fascinating. So what you see actually, I'm sorry, this might be hard to read, but at the end I'll show you how to get the slides if you want them. But basically what we're seeing is that over the last few years, the market for people with money willing to buy things on the internet is skyrocketing, right? Because the rest of the world is coming online, right? It turns out, if you do, Americans forget this, but if you do a little bit of research, we are only 5% of the world population. Something like 2 billion people are online now, and one of the real powers of the internet is that you can build a business that doesn't have to be near its customers anymore. Does that make sense? So one of the things that's changing that is the number of cell phones that are available, right? So in the West, and this might be true for you guys, tell me if it's not true, but my first interaction with the computer was a desktop computer. And then I got a laptop, and then I got a smartphone, right? So it kind of went that way. For most of the world, though, the smartphone was the first thing they ever used to get on the internet, right? And so what we see actually is on the left here, the number of smartphone subscriptions is in the billions. Depending on who you believe, there are now, the number of mobile subscriptions now equals the number of human beings on the planet. It's fascinating. And what it's driving is this mobile is eating the world. In fact, in places like India, you have entire billion-dollar e-commerce sites that do not have a website. They sell solely through the phone. So if you look at like Snapdeal or Flipkart or all these things, they're actually starting to shut down their website and only go on the mobile device, right? It's really fascinating. And so and as those phones have more sensors, there's just more and more opportunity that's coming up. And I promise this will make much more sense here in a few minutes, but what all of this is leading to is that those are the perfect conditions for you as entrepreneurs to build very profitable businesses from anywhere. It could be from Lisbon, it could be from Berlin, it could be anywhere. And that, for the people in here that are involved in economic development and making Lisbon better, making Portugal better, I would argue it changes the way that we think about city building. I won't speak for Portugal, but I'll say, in the United States, we have entire cities that were built around factories, steel factories, car factories, wood factories, huge, huge stuff in the Midwest. And those cities are now suffering, right? Because our dependence on a lot of these things has gone away. The industrial city's over, and the reason it is because it's now possible to build huge companies sitting on a couch from anywhere. Right? You look at WhatsApp, right? WhatsApp, you guys know WhatsApp. When it was acquired last year for almost $1 billion, it had 37 employees and 450 million active users, daily active users. Last report, I think at the end of last quarter, it was something like 900 million daily active users. How many employees did they add? So they doubled their user base. How many employees did they add in the last year? 17. Which is close to none. Yeah, but it's amazing, right? Like, think about it. When in history have 50 people been able to build something that 900 million people use every day? When you guys were growing up, did anybody have like a waiter job, waiter or waitress? Right? How do you make more money as a waiter or waitress? Tips, which means what? You got to like be nice, but you got to like get more people to sit down and get up, right? So I don't know what you call it here, but we call it turning tables. You have to get the food out there quick, get them to eat quick, be polite, make a joke, get the tip, and get them out, right? And so if you're a restaurant, in order to make more money, you have to get more tables, right? But with the internet, you don't have to do that, right? Does that make sense? The internet has decoupled the revenue per employee, and that has profound impact on everything that we touch. Now, there is a little asterisk. Even though you can build a big company from anywhere, it turns out that human beings are lonely. It turns out that we want to be around other people like ourselves. And so if you look at the last 5 years, you witness the rise of the co-working space, right? Lisbon has 40 of them, from what I understand. Those didn't exist 10 years ago, right? WeWork in the United States is worth $500 million now. Actually, that's a really good data point. You guys know what WeWork is? Big co-working facility? It's worth $500 million on the last valuation, but how many members do you think it has? Yeah, they have big offices in like New York and DC and San Francisco. They have a bunch of offices. But how many members does it take to have a $500 million valuation? One. Did you say one? That's a good. Whoever raised the money then is really good. It's like, I have one user, $500 million. No, we won't get into the details of the math, but I'll just tell you it's roughly 30,000. From most of the estimates that in public data that they've released, it's somewhere between 30 and 35,000 members. But think about that for a minute. These are 30 to 35,000 people that don't have an office anymore. They used to work at home or in a coffee shop or borrow somebody else's desk. But now they're paying for a desk somewhere. The point is that the reason why co-working facilities have risen is because the nature of our work has changed, but our humanity hasn't. Your parents had one job in their career, probably. You will have 6 jobs in your career, and your children will likely have 6 jobs simultaneously. Right? So, but the co-working space is just arising because people need, like when you're doing 2 things, you don't really fit into a regular office, and you don't really want to work at home. You kind of want to be around other people. And that's fascinating because people want to hang out with other people, and that is kind of what cities are about too. And it turns out, as you look at the research, I promise this will make sense in a minute here, but if you look at the research, there's a near perfect correlation between the number of small firms and the later prosperity of that region. And I tell you all this, by the way, because I'm setting it up for something that we did a couple years ago, 2 years ago. But I had to go do the research before we did this crazy thing I'll tell you about. But that's a key point, is that the number of small businesses that you have in any city, and this is true for Lisbon, it's true for Bangalore, it's true for Lincoln, Nebraska. The number of small firms are directly correlated to the future prosperity of that region. But there's sort of a dark side to tech entrepreneurship. And depending on which side of the equation you're on, you're either going to hate this or love this. But tech companies are getting smaller and smaller, right? Because you can affect lots of users, make lots of money, but you don't have to scale your people. So tech companies will never create the majority of jobs, right? But they have a disproportionately positive effect on the economy. In fact, the research shows us that for every tech job that you create here in Lisbon, another 4 service sector jobs will be created within about a mile radius. I forget who I was talking to today, but it seems that the average, if you just take the average of the 7 million people here, you take the average income of those people, it's roughly about 15,000 euros from what I understand here. But the average tech salary is about 30,000 euros. That's interesting, right? Because what is your perception of startup people? What is your perception? When you think about a startup person, what do they look like?
Cool.
I wish. Nobody called me cool when I was growing up. No, you think about hoodies and socially awkward and poor. It's kind of weird. Somehow it became okay in startups to be poor. It's like, hey, look, I have no money. But we're going to do a startup. But the research actually shows us that in Portugal, it seems like you make 50% more than the average worker. In the United States, we actually see that it's roughly 30% higher. And this is interesting because what do people do when they make more money? When you get a raise, what's the first thing you do? You what? That's right, you spend it. You spend it. You don't save it. You should save it. You should go to the gym. You probably don't go to the gym. By the way, how you guys eat so much? The food is so good, but there's everybody looks good here. I feel like a fat ass here. But here's the thing. What happens in the tech sector will determine the salary of most people. What happens to the tech community of Lisbon will determine the salary of most people that live in Lisbon. Does that make sense? So what that really means is that for the economic developers in here, the entrepreneurs in this room are not the effect of economic development, they are the cause. The more entrepreneurs, the more you support the entrepreneurs, the more probability that you'll have a large company emerge, or a successful company emerge, and the more successful companies that emerge, it breeds this cycle, right? When we funded TalkDesk a couple of years ago, prior to that, we got 0 applications from Portugal. And I can't even speak for Y Combinator or anybody else. The minute we funded one, more of you started applying, and we got to meet more, and it breeds this like cycle, and that's good. That's good because it becomes apparent to people that you too can build big businesses. So proximity is valuable, and modern economic development is really about people. It's not about the buildings. Like you guys didn't come here today because the building's cool. You came here because you came here to see other people. You came here to be around other people. So for the investors in the room, one of the ideas that is really fascinating to me is that there is a gap between the seed stage and the Series A. And one of the interesting opportunities, I think, is for those investors to actually bridge the gap, but force the companies to come here. So imagine, for example, that you still want to do some of your seed investing here, but let's say you go to all the demo days in Europe. Watch these companies graduating out of accelerators. You're not trying to support bad businesses, but if you find a good one, write a check and ask them to come spend 6 months in Lisbon. In the worst case, they might fail, but they spent money here and they might get assimilated here. But in the best case, they might actually hire people and grow. The trick is, by the way, that once you hire about 7 people, the probability of you leaving that town is very limited. Very low. Actually, this is a good question. What is the #1 reason why people move to cities? Why would somebody move to Lisbon? Right now, like just in general, why do people move? Weather. What else? Economic opportunity. Right? What brings people to cities is economic opportunity. What keeps them is the weather. What keeps them is the lifestyle. So huge opportunity between that seed and Series A. And so we experimented with this. So 2 years ago, the idea was Crystal City was it's an 8 million square foot city right outside of Washington, D.C. So you can kind of see all the monuments and stuff like that. There's a river, there's an airport there. DCA is a Reagan airport code. You can actually fly from here to Newark, New Jersey, and then it's a 30-minute flight down here. So Crystal City is basically that entire swath. And so we took it over. By the way, I might add that 4 of the guys on my team were Portuguese. In fact, one of them's here, Fred Oliveira. And so we took over a city, like we really took it over. So every lamppost, every bus, every train, I put my face and our logo on it. And the idea wasn't, like, I'm not that vain. But the idea was that we wanted to start by telling people and showing people that the city was going to take a new direction. A new direction. And so I'll just tell you this. 2 years ago, July of 2013, this city had 4,000 people and almost a 60% vacancy rate. That's 3 times higher than Lisbon's vacancy rate. And within 2 years, we got it to 60,000 people and a 7% vacancy rate. Turns out, if you put entrepreneurs everywhere, big companies follow. So for the corporates in the room, by the way, think about this for a moment. For the corporates in the room, supporting a local accelerator or supporting events like this is actually an HR function for you, at worst, and a corporate innovation opportunity for you at best. Right? Because think about it. The kind of people that take the risk to start a company and potentially raise money, even if they fail, they're probably not the kind of people that will fill out a resume or have a LinkedIn account. They're not going to talk to your recruiter. Right? So for the corporates in here, I think there's a really interesting opportunity, and we can talk more about it. But the point here is that tech companies didn't create the majority of jobs in Crystal City. They didn't take the majority of the floor space in Crystal City, but they had a profound impact. Within 2 years, Lockheed Martin moved there. Lockheed Martin, you guys know, builds destroyers and missiles. It's like the most American company. They moved their R&D department here, right? A bunch of nonprofits, big ones like the American Diabetes Association, all these people moved here. It was really fascinating. We have, I think, almost 5,000 hotel rooms now in Crystal City because people come to see them. It's really interesting. Yeah.
What is your control group? You know, like, because it can, well, I'm just being devil's advocate, but it could be business growth, distributed growth, not be due to the fact that you're putting tech people there, but just because it's growing.
Say again.
Well, my question has to do, how do you control? You know, you have to A/B. Where's your control group? Because you said like Crystal City went from this to this in 2 years, but my idea is like, how can you possibly be sure that this is due to that variable only and not because it was growing?
Yeah, I think I understood the question. So the city sat empty for 10 years.
Okay.
So basically it went from Crystal Shitty to Crystal City. I tried to change it to Singh City, but they didn't like my name. So, all right, so I know I'm running out of time here. So the point here is that what you do matters. That's the thing I want to get into for the entrepreneurs in the room. I want you to understand that what you do matters. And it matters more than, it matters because it's bigger than just you. It's bigger than just your company. It's important for Portugal. It's important for Lisbon. Everything's more transparent. Everything's more efficient. This is an interesting point, by the way. I know I'm over. I'll finish here in just a second. But there's no excuse for a bad pitch anymore. I don't care if you're in Lisbon. I don't care if you're in Bangalore. I don't care if you're in like Nebraska. The bottom line is, like, so for example, at 500 Startups, where I was one of the first 3 partners, we post almost about a third of our companies post their slides and their pitch videos online. And if you want to have a good pitch, just pick any random set of 3 and watch them. They're 3 minutes, all of them. Nobody talks more than 3 minutes. Just pick any random set of 3, and I guarantee you're going to see the pattern, right? And we can talk more about that afterwards. But everything's online. You don't have to be in Silicon Valley to make it anymore. You can do it from right here. So everything's efficient. So the key takeaways here: everybody's got to focus on traction. Look, there's 300 people in this room. 300 people that want to be entrepreneurs. Theoretically, because of the rise of the internet, there might be 600 people in this room next year. Right? In any crowded market, you need to focus on traction, but you also need to learn how to communicate and inspire people. This is actually the best life hack tip I can give you, actually. So whether you're a founder, an entrepreneur, or even just working at a company, if you can't learn how to communicate and inspire people, you're leaving a lot of your own opportunity on the table. So 2 books I would recommend there. If you do nothing else, work on this. I would say there's a book called The Charisma Myth by Olivia Cabane, and another one called So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. Really fascinating books, but those were the best $20 I ever spent. So last things, there's a lot of stuff up in here and I'm already late. One thing I'll just say is that notability is more important than credibility. All of you are credible. All of you are credible. You probably can do what you say you do. You can probably build the product you want to build. You can probably follow through on any promises you make. I'm not going to deny that, and frankly, I don't think any of us have time to deny that. If that's true, then really what you should focus on is not being more credible, but rather to be more notable. So what this really means is, let's say you make a product for real estate. I don't know, let's just say you make a product for real estate brokers. Well, it doesn't mean anything to be notable on TechCrunch for you, because your customers don't read that, right? You need to be notable in the real estate world. So maybe you speak at real estate events. Maybe you go and hold real estate networking happy hours. I don't know. But the point is focus on being notable, because you're already credible. And so we end where we started, basically, which is that tech is the fundamental driver of growth here in Lisbon, in Portugal, in Europe. And what the entrepreneurs in this room do is actually more important than anybody, I think, realizes today. And I think, if nothing else, I hope for the local tech leaders that you keep reminding the entrepreneurs of that. Because as they succeed and as they create more jobs, not only does that change those people's lives, but actually it inspires the next generation of entrepreneurs. And that's really powerful stuff. So again, my name's Paul Singh. I'm pretty easy to reach, Paul Singh on Twitter or paul@resultsjunkies.com. I'm happy to send you the slides. And I'm looking forward to meeting more of you at Happy Hour tonight. So thank you.